UFC 325 is over, and today we're going to be recapping the event and talking about what is next for the key fighters involved. Now, this was a great card, and we had some key moments in this card. We had Alexander Volkanovski defend his featherweight title against Diego Lopez, tying Jose Aldo's record for the most featherweight defenses in UFC history, cementing himself as the greatest featherweight of all time, also cementing himself as one of the greatest fighters of all time in UFC history. We had Dada 5000 versus Kimbo Slice 2. We had Benoit Saint-Denis win in the most Benoit Saint-Denis way, finishing Dan Hooker with brutal ground and pound after beating the shit out of him for a round and a bit. We had Mauricio Ruffi finish Rafael Fiziev, and I didn't expect this. I thought Mauricio Ruffi was going to beat him by decision, and the closer the fight got, I was starting to sway my pick. We saw Quillan Salkiel make it 4 in a row after beating Jamie Malarkey, submitting him. We had the humiliation ritual of Torres Finney as he got the shit kicked out of him against Jacob Malkoun over 3 rounds. We saw Junior Tafa almost pull off the impossible, nearly finishing Billy Elakana, only to get submitted later on in the fight. We saw Cody Brundage get dismantled by Cam Ralston, and sadly we saw our boy Oban Elliott get submitted, blackout before we tap out. In a fight that I thought he was winning, personally. But as I said, overall, great card. We ended up going 8 out of 10 on picks, obviously dropping the Oban Elliott fight and the main event against Volk versus Lopez. We got the rest of them right, and I would give this event an 85 out of 100. This was a good event, littered with finishes, littered with key moments, and although the majority of the fights were pretty predictable, UFC 325 rose to the occasion. Now, without further ado, we're going to be putting our matchmaking hats on and we're going to be jumping into the first fighter who we're going to be talking about, and that fighter is Alexander Volkanovski. Now, who should Volkanovski face next? I think this one's pretty clear. We're not even going to waste any time with the suspense. We're just going to jump straight into it. He's got to fight the winner of Movsar Evloev versus Lerone Murphy. Now, this fight hasn't been made official yet, but the likelihood is that this is going to be the main event for UFC London in March. And it just seems like outside of these two, maybe Gene Silva, if you want to really sort of reach for another fighter, it's out of these two. It's out of Murphy and Evloev for who's going to be facing Alexander Volkanovski next. Pretty clear cut. Personally, I think Evloev is going to win this fight. So I think later on in the year, maybe midway through the year, we're going to see Alexander Volkanovski versus Movsar Evloev. And it seems like the fairly straightforward option to go with. Now, Volkanovski has said that he's not done fighting, he's not retiring, he doesn't know where all of these rumours are coming from, he's going to continue fighting, and the likelihood is that he's going to get the winner of this fight. Either of these fighters will put on a banger against Volkanovski, and I think in terms of danger, I think Volkanovski's passed the hardest test at the moment in terms of the top of the division. I think the only fighter who does pose as much of a danger to Volkanovski as Lopez did is Gene Silva, and at the moment, he's not getting the shot. We're going to be doing Alexander Volkanovski versus the winner of Movsar Evloev and Lerone Murphy. Moving on, we've got Diego Lopez. Now, Diego Lopez fought a very similar fight to the first fight against Volkanovski. He did try and grapple more, which I said that he should have been doing. But ultimately, Volk's just too good, and Volk has Diego Lopez's number. Now, this doesn't mean that Lopez is without options here. And I think there's a very obvious matchup to go with following the loss to Volkanovski. He's just won his last fight. There's beef there. There's drama there. Coulon! Coulon! I still don't know what the fuck Coulon means. If you know what it means, please let me know. It's Yair Rodriguez. And this is a banger matchup. Diego Lopez versus Yair Rodriguez is a sick matchup. There's beef there, there's drama there. It seems pretty straightforward. They had their drama at the press conference back in whenever it was last year. Both of their teams have drama, both of their teams have beef, and it seems like the obvious answer just to settle it with the next matchup being Diego Lopez versus Yair Rodriguez. Moving on, we've got Benoit Saint-Denis, fresh off of a very violent win against Dan Hooker. In the fight against Dan Hooker, there was multiple times where Benoit was getting hurt to the body, and he looked like he was really struggling. But in Benoit Saint-Denis fashion, he rallied back, he fucking bit down on his mouth guard, and he pulled out one of the most brutal finishes of the card, raining down elbows on Dan Hooker, switching from the arm triangle position to full mount, elbow, punch, back into the arm triangle position, strangling the fuck out of Dan Hooker, back into mount, bang, and in the end, the ref had to step in and call the fight. This was a very damaged-based win. In my opinion, since the moment Benoit Saint-Denis stepped into the UFC when he fought Zaleski dos Santos, he proved himself to be a fucking BMF. So what are we going to do? We're going to throw him in against the winner of the BMF fight, against Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira. And to me, this seems like a no-brainer. Benoit Saint-Denis is on a massive win streak now. He's on a 4-fight win streak. However, at this stage, I don't think he's got enough to challenge for the undisputed title. But I think the body of work that he's put in the UFC so far, especially being on this massive win streak to date, I think he definitely deserves a crack at the BMF belt. And I think with it coming up so soon, this is a perfect either replacement fighter or a fighter to step in against the winner. It's pretty obvious at this stage. And I think BSD versus Charles Oliveira or BSD versus Max Holloway, they're both banger fights. They're both barn burners. And they're both fights that you know in advance are going to be scrappy. And it's going to be a bloodbath, like Benoit Saint-Denis said in the press conference earlier on this week. We're going to be doing Benoit Saint-Denis versus the winner of the BMF belt. And we're not going to waste any more time on this. We're going to jump straight into the next matchup for Dan Hangman Hooker. Now, Dan was close. Hooker was very, very close to winning that fight. He was throwing some body teeps that were really, really giving BSD problems. Dan Hooker's proved that he's still dangerous. Dan Hooker's proved that he's still dangerous, and believe it or not, I would have even said with a win or a loss, I would give him this opponent anyway, just based on recent events. I think you guys know which one I'm going to be going with, and that is going to be Paddy Pimblett. Paddy Pimblett's just lost to Justin Gaethje, and he's in a position where he needs to fight his way back up. What better way to do it than to settle some beef, get some eyes on it, because this fight will generate a lot of views and a lot of hype. These guys have been going back and forward, and the things that they've been saying to each other, pretty gnarly. I don't know if you've been listening or if you've been paying attention to the MMA Twitter space recently, but these guys have been spitting venom at each other. I think it's a pretty obvious matchup to go for, Dan Hooker versus Paddy Pimblett. We're going to be matching them up next, and that's going to be a belter of a fight. Paddy Pimblett has shown that he does not go down easy. However, Paddy Pimblett is also not as much of a marauder as Benoit Saint-Denis is, and Dan Hooker held his own for the majority of that fight. Paddy Pimblett versus Dan Hooker is cinema. Paddy Pimblett versus Dan Hooker is going to be the next fight where we're going to be matching up for these guys. Paddy Pimblett versus Dan Hooker is inevitable. Moving on, we've got Mauricio Ruffy. Now, Mauricio Ruffy really, really impressed me. I do just want to say one thing. I think he was losing the fight before he pulled off the win. However, for the majority of the time he was losing the fight, you could see him making reads and you can see him collecting data and looking for those counter shots. And eventually it was a quick, sharp shot that got Fiziev wobbled and that eventually put Fiziev down. So it just goes to show that throughout the entirety of the fight, you can't take your foot off the gas when it comes to Mauricio Ruffy because he can just pull out of the bag at any point. He's a finish artist. He's a KO artist. And if you give him an ounce, he'll take it. Now the question is, who do we match him up against next? Now, this guy's been in the news recently, not necessarily for anything good, more so on a delusional based scale. Now this guy thought that he was going to be fighting at the White House. Dana White quickly shut that down. He could still fight at the White House, but he was specifically calling for a specific opponent. And he has been calling for that opponent for years and years now, and he's not going to get that opponent. Michael Chandler has been wanting to fight Conor McGregor for the longest time. Best we can do is Conor McGregor Part 2. We'll give you the early Conor McGregor. How'd you like that? No, I'm only joking. Mauricio Ruffy, I kind of see the comparisons. But do you know what? When we talk about fighting styles, and I feel like I'm the only one who sort of picked up on this, Mauricio Ruffy kind of fought a little bit like Sean O'Malley. He doesn't necessarily look too powerful or too strong in there, but when he hits you hard and he hits you fast to the point where it stuns you, and he follows up for the finish. McGregor was always way more of a pressure fighter that would make fighters fold within the cage just because he would walk them down, intimidate them, and then find the shot. Mauricio Ruffy wasn't doing that against Rafael Fiziev. He was circling on the edge and he was looking for a shot. Eventually he found his shot, which caused him to get the win. Now, Michael Chandler is currently ranked 12th in the lightweight division. Mauricio Ruffy is currently ranked 14th in the lightweight division. He's obviously just beaten Rafael Fiziev, who is ranked 9th. So come Monday, the division's going to be looking a little bit different in terms of rankings. Ruffy is probably going to be ranked higher than Michael Chandler. And in which case, it makes sense that he's probably going to be trying to fight up. I know Brian Ortega has just pulled out of his fight against Renato Moicano, so that's obviously an option. However, I think Ruffy versus Michael Chandler is a sick fight. Michael Chandler will come forward the entire time. Michael Chandler will put his chin out there for Ruffy to catch. And it's a good test to see if Ruffy can continue to chin these guys who just maraud their way forward. And it often leaves us with a pretty sick, exciting matchup and fight that has a sick, crazy outcome. Someone gets colded. And I think when you look at Michael Chandler versus Mauricio Ruffy, one of these guys is going to go to sleep. Michael Chandler versus Mauricio Ruffy is the next matchup that I want to see. Moving on. We got Rafael Fiziev. Now, Rafael Fiziev was putting on a very good performance up until the finish. He looked good. But I think there's one thing that's kind of glowing with Rafael Fiziev. This guy can move down in weight classes. This guy doesn't have to stay at lightweight. I would personally like to see Rafael Fiziev make a move down to featherweight. And if we're talking about matchups in the featherweight division, I want to see Arnold Allen versus Rafael Fiziev. Now, UFC, sign me. Sign me to the matchmaking division. Sign me to the war room, because this fight is absolute fucking cinema. Rafael Fiziev versus Arnold Allen will feed generations, especially after Arnold Allen just came off of his loss to Gene Silva. He's kind of positioned himself in a way that he's not going to be fighting up. And if Rafael Fiziev moves down, obviously he's unranked. He has to prove himself against someone. And Rafael Fiziev at this stage in his career has the pedigree to face a relatively big name if he's moving divisions. I think that big name should be Arnold Allen. Can you imagine the stand-up in this one? Because neither of these guys are going to try and wrestle. Just look at fucking Fiziev's face. That's a face to say that I'm not to be fucked with. And against Ruffy, he wasn't to be fucked with. He just got caught. He was winning the fight. Now, I think Fiziev has floated around the lightweight division for long enough, and it just seems like he's falling short every now and again. So like I said, I want a refresher for Rafael Fiziev. Move down to the featherweight division. It's doable. He's not a massive lightweight at all. And as I said, the Arnold Allen fight, that will feed generations. That is going to be an absolute fucking slugfest. And this is another one where I say this could be fight of the year. I'm only joking. But Rafael Fiziev versus Arnold Allen is an absolute scrap. Let me know if you want this, because in the featherweight division, this one just screams out to me. Rafael Fiziev versus Arnold Allen is going to be the next one for Fiziev that we're going to be picking. Moving on. We got Bam Bam. Oh my God. Now, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough when a massive fan favourite goes on a losing skid, because it kind of presents the UFC with a difficult dilemma. Do we cut him? Do we give him an absolute layup and just let him float around at the bottom of the division, or even around some of the unranked fighters? Because at this stage, I mean, what's Taito Ivasa ranked at the moment? He's ranked 12. And if he's not dropped out of the rankings come Monday, he's going to be around 14, 15. And it's just really not looking good for Taito Ivasa at the moment. So if we're talking about next opponents, I hate to say it. You're going to the PFL, buddy. No, but in all seriousness, I think Taito Ivasa should just retire at this point. He's got his cabbage business. You know what I'm saying? He's probably making a hell of a load of money off that. He's Taito Ivasa. He's got a shit ton of followers on social media. He's essentially at influencer status now. Fighters get to a certain level of notoriety where they just don't have to fight anymore. They could just be influencers. They can get brand deals. They can say buy this product, and they get paid and they make their living. And Taito Ivasa at this stage, 5-fight losing skid, I think now. Biggest losing streak in the UFC currently. It just seems like a no-brainer. Hang it up. And if you're not going to hang it up, then you're going to have to fight like an absolute can. And in which case, you're just going to get hate, even if you knock him out. I think losing in your home country is probably the last straw. So we're just going to be sending Taito Ivasa into retirement. You've earned it, buddy. We've got your highlights. You've done your part in the UFC. Thank you for your service. Taito Ivasa. See you later, brother. It was nice. And we're going to be moving straight on to the next fighter, Talison Teixeira. Now, this guy kind of has just put on a bit of a shit showing for himself. KO'd by Derek Lewis. And his fight against Taito Ivasa last night was just a bit terrible. He had some early successes with the grappling, but he didn't do anything in terms of damage. He just laid on top. He literally just camped in full mount on Taito Ivasa. Did nothing to Taito Ivasa as Taito Ivasa was basically just laying there like a beached whale, not being able to fucking do anything. Talison Teixeira was just sitting on him for the majority of the fight. And in the third round, these dudes, as I said, it was Dada 5000 versus Kimbo Slice Part 2. They were so exhausted. They were fucking swinging. Taito Ivasa was falling over after missing punches. He was throwing punches. He missed it. His balance had gone. He was so tired he couldn't even keep himself up. Talison Teixeira would try and bum rush him. He'd fucking trip up. They'd fall on the ground. And then at the end, there was just that fucking photo that I included at the start of the PowerPoint of these guys just exhausted against the cage with the medics attending to them. It wasn't a crazy high output fight. They were just exhausted. They were just big fat guys who got exhausted. It was a terrible showing. It was an absolute terrible showing. And I don't think Talison Teixeira, by any means, has done enough in this fight to deserve a big name in the division. He's done enough to fight up, but we're not going to be rewarding your behaviour, Talison Teixeira, lad. We're going to be giving you Mick Parkin. Clear cut. Mick Parkin. We're giving you Mick Parkin. Now, Mick Parkin has just come off of a loss against Marcin Tybura. However, Talison Teixeira fought shit. And he fought a Taito Iwasa who was 2 years out of the game, who was on a 4-fight losing streak. He almost got finished multiple times in that fight. So we're not rewarding that, as I said. We're giving you Mick Parkin. You can fight up, but you can fight one space above you. I can assume that Talison Teixeira is probably only going to move one space up in the rankings. And in that case, Mick Parkin is just above him. We're going to do Talison Teixeira versus Mick Parkin. And the loser, God help the loser. God help the loser in that fight, because Dana White's probably not going to be happy with you. Two supposedly promising prospects in the heavyweight division, both kind of fallen short. I know Mick Parkin's from the UK, but that's no excuse. There's no excuse. We're doing Talison Teixeira versus Mick Parkin, and we're not wasting any time on this, so we're going to be moving straight on to Quillen fucking Salkeld, mate. Now, this guy is on such a hot streak. This guy's on such a hot streak in the division at the moment. He's been finishing everyone. Finished Anshul Jabli with a right cross, straight in the first round. Defeated Yanao Ashmouz, very crafty, underrated fighter by decision. Head kicked Nasrat Hakparas, his father owns a fucking bakery. And he's just choked out Jamie Mullarkey in the first round. Quillen Salkeld is on a fucking streak right now, boys. And we're going to be keeping the momentum going. We're going to be getting him in against Beneil Dariush. You can say that this is a lamb going to slaughter, but Dariush is ranked higher than Quillen Salkeld, and if we're following the traditions of the sport of MMA, we work on a rankings-based system. Beneil Dariush is above Quillen Salkeld. It seems like a really good option. Quillen Salkeld has an opportunity to rise his stock even more. Beneil Dariush has an opportunity to keep himself asserted in the division. I think the scrambles in this fight is going to be really, really underrated. Now, a lot of people, a lot of the casual fans, a lot of fans that just kind of casually watch the sport think that Quillen Salkeld is just a knockout artist. He is not. His bread and butter is the grappling. He is a grappler first and foremost. And so is Beneil Dariush. These guys are going to have a great little scrap. And I think people might think that this fight is just an easy fight for Quillen, but it's not. I mean, Jamie Mullarkey did have some success in their fight last night. He did impose his will. He did push Quillen up to the cage. Quillen just pulled off a very, very impressive trip from having his back against the cage that eventually led to him having the finishing position. I would still suggest that certain fighters can have some success in the physicality realm when facing Quillen Salkeld. And Beneil Dariush is a relentless fighter. I know he's been finished. I know he's had a tough time as of recent, but he's still a very relentless fighter that will push the pace, that will show an extreme threat when it comes to the grappling, and that has KOs. I don't think this fight is as one-sided as people might see, and I think Quillen Salkeld versus Beneil Dariush is a sick matchup. It's a sick fight. Quillen will be fighting up. Beneil Dariush will be fighting down after taking a loss. It makes sense. We're going to be matching Quillen Salkeld versus Beneil Dariush as the next matchup in the lightweight division. And this is a fucking barn burner. This is a barn burner. Take my money. And on that note, we're going to be moving on to the last fight that we're going to be talking about. And it's fucking Jamie Mullarkey, mate. Now, Jamie Mullarkey, do you know what? I think that Jamie Mullarkey is actually very underrated. He's a very underrated fighter who's just kind of had a bit of a shitter recently. You know, he did win his fight against Rolando Bedoya previous to losing to Quillen Salkeld last night. But previous to that, he lost to Mauricio Ruffy, he lost to Nasrat Hakparas. And I think those two fighters are very, very underrated as well. Both of them. Ruffy's obviously, this is a well-aged loss for Jamie Mullarkey at this stage. And I think if you look at the last 3 losses that Jamie Mullarkey has taken in the last 3 years. You're talking Nasrat Hakparas, you're talking Mauricio Ruffy, you're talking Quillen Salkeld. Now, Mauricio Ruffy and Quillen Salkeld both had an incredible showing last night, and I think both of their stocks are going to continue to rise. Now, when it comes to Jamie Mullarkey, I think he's still got something. I don't think he's just washed. A lot of people are just saying that he's washed, he's done, he's out of there. He's not. His last 3 fights are against quality opponents. And I think that he has the ability to shut down some of these up-and-comers still. But rather than switching lanes and going for someone significantly worse, I think we give him another prospect test. And I think after that stage, if he loses that, then we can talk about his next steps going forward to that. But I think that a prospect in the division, close to Jamie Mullarkey, that he would have some success with, and that with a win over, could catapult him back into the good books in the UFC and the fans, is Daniel Zellhuber. Now, Daniel Zellhuber has just lost to Michael Johnson. He's just lost to one of the Unks. So, on both sides of the equation, we can do it like this. We give Daniel Zellhuber, another Unk. You want to prove yourself against the Unks, dude? You've just lost to fucking Michael Johnson. Here's another Unk in Jamie Mullarkey. If you can beat him, all right, cool. Maybe you had a bit of a stinker in the first fight. Maybe you are still a very valued prospect and that it was just an off night for you. So here's another Unk so you can prove yourself. On the side of Jamie Mullarkey, personally, as I said, I think this guy's still got something. And I think this guy can still beat these prospects that are coming through. And I think in a match against Daniel Zellhuber, we're going to find out a lot of answers for both of these guys. I don't know, it just seems like when you look at the division, this is a fight that kind of screams out. Maybe not to most people, but when you actually break down this fight and have a think about it, Daniel Zellhuber has the ability to get out-muscled, to be sort of on the receiving end of some physicality problems. And Jamie Mullarkey, he's a bit of a unit. He's a bit of a unit in the division. He is chinny, which is where Zellhuber might find some success. But if we're objectively looking at a next opponent for Jamie Mullarkey, something that can build his stock, something that will give his opponent an opportunity to build their stock, this is a no-brainer. Jamie Mullarkey versus Daniel Zellhuber is going to be the next matchup that I want to see for both of these guys. And I think that is a great way to wrap up the video. So if you haven't already, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. It really, really means a lot to me if you do. Helps boost the channel, helps us get some traction, helps us get some momentum, helps us build the motion. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.